It now appears that we have a major energy crisis in China, the United Kingdom, and in the European Union, thanks to politicians and bureaucrats. All forms of energy are politicized, and there is bad central planning when it comes to energy usage and types of energy used for power generation and transportation fuels in every country nowadays. So the price of natural gas is going absolutely bonkers in the European Union and the United Kingdom. Electricity prices are surging. There are shortages. Prices are through the roof. A lot of this could have been solved with nuclear power generation, as countries like Germany, as politicians or bureaucrats phased out nuclear power after the Fukushima incident back in, I think, 2011. But electricity costs and other heating costs are going through the roof right now. U.S. liquefied natural gas companies, so your Cheniere Energies, your Chevrons, your Royal Dutch Shells, there are some smaller players. They should all benefit from this, hopefully, with long-term supply contracts as energy utilities in Asia, China, the United Kingdom, and Europe look to get more secure long-term supply contracts. That should benefit private sector LNG companies here in the U.S. But I was researching the coal shortages and electricity prices rising in China more, and it's actually really crazy how bad the central planning is in China, because you have recently, in the last couple of weeks, you have a mandate from the Chinese Communist Party telling the Chinese energy companies to secure reliable energy supplies at all costs. But you have all these contradictory policies that have come out. There are some excellent videos from China Insights over the last couple weeks going through how the energy utilities in the majority of China can't make a profit with rising coal prices because they're not allowed to increase electricity costs. So basically, a lot of these energy utilities have been running, because of central planning, at large losses. But China should be switching over to nuclear, or China should be switching over to natural gas powered. It's actually easier to convert coal-fired power plants, and China's talking about this green energy and building out new green energy. The truth is that China has not built a lot of green energy. The truth is that China is the world's largest polluter. They're still building coal-fired power plants. It would actually be fairly cheap for coal-fired power plants to switch over to natural gas. The US already did it during the shale boom. A lot of energy utilities here in the United States already switched from coal-fired over to natural gas. Politicians and bureaucrats did not have to force them to do so, although they've been talking about forcing them to do so, but the utilities did it on their own. So the bottom line here is that because of bad policies, these climate change, green energy policies, phasing out nuclear, not thinking smart long-term, these politicians and bureaucrats, bad central planning, and then of course they blame capitalism, they have caused these enormous distortions with energy and electricity costs. And it was obvious 18 to 20 months ago, because of how much natural gas supply was coming off online, that eventually the natural gas price was going to rise a lot. It was only a matter of time. A ton of natural gas supply came offline. It's going to take some time for more natural gas supply to come back online. This is not going to happen in a couple months. It's going to take at least 6 to 12 months for a sizable amount of natural gas supply to come back online. I did a video on this a couple weeks ago. The rig count was up a little bit, but there was so much natural gas supply, the shale gas byproduct of shale oil drilling. And the Biden administration, because of their narrative and their agenda, their Green New Deal and climate agenda, is not going to make it easy for drilling permits, is not going to make it easy for U.S. shale oil companies to drill on federal land in New Mexico, where a lot of shale oil drilling occurs. So a lot of these U.S. shale oil companies, they had to get the drilling permits and the land leases before Biden came into office. So there was some of these companies that saw this ahead of time last year in November, December of 2020, January of 2021, and they got the permits and the land leases ahead of time on federal land, but not all the companies did that. So the amount of drilling, the amount of new supply of natural gas and oil that could come back online quickly, it's not going to happen as quick as people think because of the permitting issue and the land leases and stuff on federal lands. There's a good amount of shale oil and shale gas that's drilled on federal land. So all these problems, in my opinion, are because energy is so heavily politicized with central planning. Here in the United States, the George W. Bush administration, they gave subsidies for corn ethanol. The Obama administration gave subsidies for wind. Trump didn't really throw a bunch of energy and oil subsidies. He just tried to free up some rules and regulations at the Department of Energy. But here in the United States, the U.S. Department of Energy will not allow any research and development dollars for the liquid fluoride molten salt thorium reactor. It is blocked. I've spoken to multiple sources in the nuclear industry, including people at utility companies and people in nuclear power. They're not going to allow even test reactors or a pilot program for the liquid fluoride molten salt thorium reactor here in the United States. It's going to have to occur in another country. So the supply problems for energy and electricity prices are not going to be solved. Politicians and bureaucrats may try rationing, may try wage and price controls. This is going to cause even higher cost of goods sold in manufacturing. It's going to take away from consumer discretionary budgets. People are going to spend on the necessities. It's going to be a mess. Finally, if you like content like this and want to help keep content like this free so it doesn't all end up behind a paywall, or you want far more in-depth content research, financial education, and analysis than I provide in these short little free videos, there are now over 180 articles, charts, and audio podcasts behind the paywall for my patrons, all for the cost of a Starbucks cup of coffee, only $5 a month. I think it is one of the best deals out there. And just in the last 16 or so weeks, there are 30 new articles out on a lot of interesting topics about global macro companies and sectors, on gold miners, silver miners, precious metal royalty and streaming companies, which gold mining stocks are increasing their dividends, and also on uranium. So if I could wrap up this short little video very quickly, you have Putin and Gazprom that have restricted natural gas supply to the United Kingdom and the European Union. U.S. LNG companies like Cheniere Energy and Chevron should benefit from this if Russia is going to continue to restrict natural gas supply to the European Union. You have bad central planning policies from politicians and bureaucrats and PhDs in energy regulatory agencies dictating bad policies, bad central planning, bad allocation of capital. A lot of this is because of the Green New Deal and climate change agenda, although in my opinion, natural gas is very clean and we can do nuclear the right way. We need to spend millions of dollars in research on the liquid fluoride molten salt thorium reactor. Meanwhile, we should be building other types of nuclear power plants. And then once we have the lifter technology perfected, then we could take that nuclear waste from older nuclear reactors and also from nuclear weapons, and we could use that nuclear waste to power the lifter reactors. So I'd like to see that. It's not an investable technology right now, unfortunately. Hopefully it will be in the next 5 to 10 years, but right now it's not. But I think U.S. LNG companies will heavily benefit with long-term supply contracts over the next couple years from utilities in China, the United Kingdom, and Europe. And this is because a lot of these other countries did not build nuclear power plants because of the phobia that has still hung over a lot of people after Fukushima in 2011. So it is very, very difficult, at least here in the United States, and I'm sure in many other developed countries, to do uranium mining, and also the permitting process just to build one nuclear power plant. The local, state, and federal permitting process is extensive here in the United States. It takes over a decade and tens of millions of dollars in permitting fees, rules, regulations, complying with all the red tape just to get one nuclear power plant approved. And then you're looking at billions of dollars in construction costs. Very, very expensive, very, very time consuming. That is a long time to wait for a return on capital. So until that changes, It's going to be tough here in the United States to build a lot of new nuclear power plants. A lot of administrations don't even seem in favor of it. Even though you see politicians talk about how they want clean energy, nuclear in many cases is not brought up. So I think natural gas is probably the best, most viable, and you see that with a lot of the larger energy companies, whether that's ExxonMobil, Chevron, Royal Dutch Shell. They've all heavily invested in finding new natural gas supply, and they expect natural gas demand to be a big demand driver increase in the decades to come. As they bridge towards cleaner technologies, and natural gas is cleaner burning compared to coal and oil. Even though it is not as energy dense, the most energy dense form of energy we have available right now is actually nuclear, but unfortunately, a lot of developed countries are not making it easy at all to build new nuclear power plants.